Hello, welcome. This is a shoot from last week. I wanted to get this video out as soon as we'd shot, but I ended up getting sick, which for some reason always happens when I go to London. I've got a weak immune system. We were shooting in a pretty corporate part of London in the Paddington area, so you can see there's some big office buildings, and I was basically getting subcontracted by Joel, who I've worked with lots before, and we were shooting a video for his client, who are a data management company. So my role was basically to bring my equipment, my lighting, a second camera, and just bring some extra manpower to the day. Now you'll see there's a limit to my equipment, which Joel knows and I knew, and we were kind of shooting in the most challenging corporate environment that you can. We did have these lovely shears, which you can see in the background, these nice curtains to kind of block out light and cut reflections and things like that. But we were shooting up against a big window, which is always difficult. We were also shooting, because basically you can see the road behind us, we didn't want to have the road as the backdrop, so we shot back towards the courtyard of this building, which also happened to be where the sun was going. It was intermittently cloudy, but of course, when the sun is shining through that window behind your subject, you are really fighting to throw as much kind of light at the subject as you can without while also trying to keep it flattering. And we did end up basically blinding the contributor, but you'll see our monstrous setup in a minute. We managed to get a frame which looked pretty nice, using a little bit of bounce as well, so that any light that was shining directly behind our subject did then kind of get bounced back. So having a 5-in-1 reflector was actually our saving grace. You can see that's our monster setup. I'm not sure the MC Pro was actually doing anything, or necessarily the 60 watt light, but you can see my panel light, the 200 watt light, as our main fixture there in the top right, a little 60 watt light next to it, and we're actually bouncing a 60 watt light into that 5-in-1, which was actually at the perfect angle to catch, as I said, any of that sunlight coming in that window. I guess that MC could have been acting as a bit of an eye light, but I guess all three of those, that kind of big block of lights, would have been caught in the eye of our contributor. Anyway, so it was, we got our frames up pretty early. It was, again, pretty nice space to shoot in. That courtyard was a really nice backdrop. And then we were basically just seeing how far we could move lights in and kind of what room we had to work with to kind of make sure the lighting was flattering and that we were getting enough output. I've kind of run out of things to say. I'll talk about things as they come up, but my wider topic for this video was the different types of freelancing. So, for example, we'll start with being a subcontractor. So for this shoot, I was coming on for two things. It was for my kit and also just basically to have another trusted set of eyes on everything. As I talk about on this channel, when you're a one-man band, you are responsible for everything. And if something happens to the audio, that's your responsibility. Equally, if something happens and we don't get all of the interview responses that we needed, that's also your responsibility if you're working as a solo operator. So that means two things. You either have to completely cut back on what you're shooting, so shoot something far less ambitious, really simplify the process for yourself, and I think I do that in some cases. The other thing it does is it makes it a pretty stressful process, I would say, to have all of those things in your head. So it was nice for Joel to be able to bring me on. It's nice for me to be able to go onto this shoot because it's minimal effort. Like, not that I was brought on kind of really short term, but I was brought on at the last stage of production, so I didn't have any pre-production calls or anything like that. It was kind of just show up, look at the space, and help them light it and make it look good. So that's one type of working. That's honestly my favorite type of working because you always know the person you're getting subcontracted for. You're a step away from the second type of work that I was going to talk about, where you're being hired by a production company as a bigger role. So you might be kind of shooting the whole thing, bringing all of your equipment. There's a bit of convincing that the closer you get to that end client, the more convincing there needs to be about, for example, is this person the right person to shoot this? Why are we bringing them on? You know, are there competitors who might do this better or do it for a better rate? So there's all of that to deal with. And then, of course, there's working directly with the end client, which is a beast of its own. You definitely have more flexibility. You're able to do more, have more creative control. but it is a lot more hours and always works out that you end up joining a million calls and feedback sessions and so on. So that's a different beast entirely. I'm going to pause for a second and talk about our interview frames. Joel's let me use my B-cam shot. So this was our second angle. We're at around 50 mil, kind of shooting head and shoulders here. And I've purposely selected a clip where the sun came out. So you can see, you can't see the sky in this shot, so you won't see quite how bright it was, but that 5-in-1 is really working with us here. You can see the sun was basically, you'll see it in the BTS in a minute, but it's basically like hitting the whole of that window. And we ended up with a pretty neutral looking frame. Our wide shot was between 24 and 35 mil, which I always like because you get more of the environment. And then this is kind of like a head and shoulders shot. That's what I always opt to shoot. I think sometimes you can shoot like a really tight close up and it feels very dramatic, particularly for this type of video, which was a client testimonial. So I liked the final frames. I think it all worked out okay in the end. You can see the monster of a light setup we had here. And then Joel, quick thinking as ever, was like, oh, can we also shoot some B-roll here while we're set up for it? Which was a great idea because we already had all the lights in the right place and, you know, it was a beautiful space to shoot in. So that was good. Something else I was going to talk about is my A7 IV actually overheated in this shoot, which was the whole point of me buying an A7 IV, was a bit of a middle ground between, I mean, just a great hybrid camera all around, but supposedly had pretty good hybrid cooling versus my ZV-E1, which I previously shot all of my projects on. This room was toasty. I was hot the whole day. I was just wearing a t-shirt. So it was just really hitting the limit of what that camera could do. And I did have to cut the interview and basically say, sorry, can I just, all I did is put a new stock battery in and we continued shooting. And I pulled the V-mount plate back just to give the camera more circulation. But I think that is the one situation, if you're shooting in an environment that's over, let's say, 25 degrees, you really do need to start thinking ahead a little bit about potentially using an external fan. So I think for a project like this, where it's very much in my interest for me to do the thing I've been hired to do really well, I'm going to bring the external fan, have that plugged in, rigged up to V-mount, so I at least have the option, and then it's so much less intrusive. All I would have to do is go and quickly turn on the fan and you can have it running at quite a low speed and still help to maintain quite a low temperature on the camera. I also managed to fit everything into one rolling bag, which is good, and one light case. So you can see that's everything I brought there. We've got obviously the F22C panel, the 60X. For someone like me who travels primarily by train and on foot, the 60X is a pretty big light to bring. I would say I would benefit a lot from having some smaller fixtures. I know I've talked about these lights before. There's the Amaran Ray series. They've just brought out the Halo series, I think. They're these really compact lights, particularly the Ray ones. You can get like a 200 watt light in this tiny little brick with no power brick, no ballast. It's all built into the light, which is great. So something like that would make a lot more sense to bring than my 60X. My 60X is good for one specific thing, which is because it has a built-in Fresnel, you get this kind of beam of light, which you can angle, you can use it as an accent light or quite a dramatic backlight. I think that's what it's good for. I just included there my point of view. We were shooting some B-roll and I said I could stay for a little bit. You know, it worked out to about a half day and I could just kind of support with the B-roll section of the afternoon. And that was it. I handed over my footage and headed home. Like one of the most chill shoots, always lovely to work with people you know and on a project where all you need to do is show up and do your job well.